Hi, 210 students. This is your biweekly update. Today is January 31st, and the due date for our first 2 weeks just passed last night at midnight. So I have read some of those Learning Outcome 1 and 3 quiz essay questions, and I'm really impressed by everyone's ability to articulate what multicultural education is and what critical thinking is. So good job on that front. I've also looked at some of your service learning or research project plans, and I've given you feedback. I will try to get to grading the rest of those as soon as I can. Also, if you haven't already, please be sure to fill out that beginning of the course survey so that you can do it at the beginning and end and I can compare results. That's in that first module before the assignments at the bottom of the module. So now we are moving into Learning Outcome 7. We're going to talk about ethnicity, race, and gender. The specific wording for the learning outcome for the next 2 weeks is to differentiate issues of of culture, ethnicity, race, gender, and describe how concepts of equality and equal educational opportunities have evolved into educational policy. And to do that, you'll be learning about Brown versus the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. You may have heard of this before. You might not know exactly what it is, or maybe some of you have studied it extensively in prior classes. But this is one landmark court case that has really changed how we educate students today. It was sort of the beginning of the end of segregation. Although, well, I can talk more about that, but later. You have a lot of stuff to read about both of those topics, gender and ethnicity and race. So once you go through all the material in Canvas, which by the way will probably take you longer than it did the last 2 weeks as we were getting started, and you read the textbook chapters, which are chapter 2 for ethnicity and race and chapter 4 for gender, you should have a pretty decent background about how Brown versus Board plays into our history of education. That being said, there are certainly other times in history where educational policy has evolved for the better of certain ethnicities, races, and genders, and sometimes for the worse. Like, I think just off the top of my head, the boarding schools for Native Americans in the 1800s that lasted to the early 1900s. We will talk a little bit more about that this semester. If you were in my in-person class, we usually watch a couple documentaries that bring up the hardships of children who were put into boarding schools and pretty much had their culture taken from them, as well as their families and their comfort and all of those other things. So there are a lot of ways that we could reach this learning outcome. Brown versus Board just seemed like the right one for this module. We'll get into more later about other groups. So this week on February 13th, right before Valentine's Day, you have a chapter quiz due for chapters 2 and 4, and these will align pretty much with those chapters fully. So if you have an older textbook edition, there might be some numbers that are off or whatever. If this seems to be the case, let me know. But if you don't read the chapter, then the quiz is so closely aligned to it that by the time you take the quiz, you'll probably have to read the chapter looking for the answers. So I'd recommend just reading the chapters. I know they can be a little bit dry. And then you'll have a lot of background on Brown versus Board, and you'll be answering some discussion questions regarding that. Lastly, you will start Other People's Children by Lisa Delpit. This is sort of a dense read as well. So in addition to 2 chapters this week and the introduction of this, plan to spend some significant time reading over the next few weeks. Don't forget the discussion board post should be thorough and engaging and show evidence that you've read the materials. So you can't just say, something off the cuff like I believe, but actually provide evidence. Or I disagree with the author. That's totally fine too. This is a critical thinking class, so I do not expect you to agree either with one another or the authors of either of these texts, but I want to know why you disagree if that's the case. Also, to put it on your radar, coming up in April is a town hall that will be held at the Yavapai College Prescott campus Monday, April 23rd in the evening from 5:30 to 8:30. I will give you more information about it. It's not required, but it's strongly encouraged. And I know a lot of you may not be anywhere near the Prescott area, so that would be a hardship. But as much as we can, I want our class specifically to get involved because the theme is creating an atmosphere of respect on our campus. And I think that just perfectly aligns with the objectives of this class. So I'll be giving you more information about that. And in the meantime, the Respect campaign has been something that Yavapai College has done starting last semester and will roll into this semester. So you'll probably be getting emails from me or maybe news flashes or Duck Soups college-wide about how you can participate in the Respect campaign. The last thing I wanted to share with you was from PDK. It's called Learning to Lead for Racial Equity. I don't think you can access this online. It might be available in the library database, but it's just an educational journal that I subscribe to, and it's telling that even today, this came out November of 2017, we still talk about ways to make schools more inclusive and to meet the needs of all students, ethnicity-wise and gender-wise. But the key principles that they wanted to share in this article were that professional learning about race and equity requires a systems thinking approach. So that means that you don't just add cultural diversity, multicultural education as an add-on to education as it is, but rather you embed it in the school culture. Sort of what we touched on over the last few weeks, how critical thinking and multicultural education go together. And it's more than just celebrating a holiday here and there, but rather being intentional about ways to address race and ethnicity from the start. Number 2, professional learning about race and equity requires some willingness to experience discomfort. I anticipate that some of you will not be super comfortable in this class, and then some of you will not be comfortable when you're out there teaching and learning about a variety of different cultures. But you have to be willing to feel that discomfort in order to meet the needs of all of your students. Number 3 is learning about race and equity requires people to tell their stories. So as you'll get over and over again in other people's children, we should be listening to everyone and trying to understand their perspective, their point of view, just critical thinking. And then lastly, professional learning about race and equity rarely leads to closure. So it's something that we will constantly be working on probably forever, especially as teachers. Anybody who interacts with humans, you're going to be working with people that have different cultures than you do, whether it be race, gender, religion, any of the things that we're going to cover in this class, and then some. So it's sort of a never-ending goal to open yourself up to the ideas of others and find ways to include them no matter what. I just thought it was interesting and timely. I just got this the other day and thought it would be worth sharing. I thought about copying it and scanning it and putting it into Canvas, but you all have so much in there to go through, so many articles and videos to read as it is. But if any of you are interested on more up-to-date research, I'm happy to get things to you that may be of interest. If you let me know sort of what you're looking for with your research project or things like that, I can have it in the back of my mind, and if I see something come up, I can get it to you. All right, well, have a great 2 weeks. I will check back in again soon.